Alright, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, guys. I'm here joined with someone who's very well known, frankly, in the MMA community. He's been described as one of, if not the best MMA coaches in the world, actually. And our good friend Joe Rogan, who I've made a video about recently, is one of the people who actually described him with such a description. We should maybe get a video, we'll get a cutting of Joe Rogan saying this just to see exactly what he said. Let's take a look at what Joe Rogan said.
You've got Firas Zahabi, who is probably my first choice, or one of them.
He'd be my number one. Him or Lisa Bowling.
As a striking coach, you mean?
As an everything coach.
Yeah,
Firas is a mastermind.
come on.
John
Firas,
Donaher's another
Jackson.
mastermind. Matt Hume and Firas Zahabi, to me, are commensurate. I think they're exactly the same level. They're both wizards. Both those guys, they're masters. Matt Hume had more MMA fights, I think. Firas had a lot of kickboxing fights, but Firas is like nasty on the ground, and he's a super genius when it comes to like his analytical mind, the way he breaks down fights. He breaks down street fights. There's YouTube videos where he breaks down how this guy came at a guy and the guy cracked this guy with a left hook, and he explains the footwork, he draws it in a diagram.
He's also young.
Yeah.
And you know what he also
put out a video where he's testing guard work and ground and pound on guards. What guard works best for ground and pound? He did this shit. He put it on YouTube. He put it up. So he had him, Gary Toden, and I think Gordon Ryan. They had like some dude jump with boxing gloves, jump in their guard and start pounding them. And in the video,
See, guys, I'm not joined with just anybody. I'm joined with someone who's got high notoriety in the MMA community. But what people don't know about him, Firas Zahabi, what people don't know about Firas Zahabi is that he's actually very well grounded in philosophy, and he's becoming even more grounded now in theology as well. Just get us started, Firas. What was your kind of experience with theology? You were telling me something about your dad when you were younger.
Yeah, when I was young, my father, he came from Lebanon with not much of an education. He was a mechanic. He really grew up in the garages, learning a trade. In that time, you didn't really go to school for long. Of course, there was a civil war in Lebanon, so they were refugees to Canada, etc.
Yeah.
Well, my introduction to Islam, the first time I heard about Islam was my father invited a preacher to come to preach to his kids, to teach them the deen, teach them the religion.
Yeah.
And I remember those lessons really well, quite well, and they served me my entire life. And I would say it gave me even an edge in life because all my peers were not Muslim. They were 99% Christian or Jewish. And a lot of secular families and kids, etc. And there was some lessons that really I felt helped me out through life and gave me a strong edge, because I found like, especially in the West, people struggle very emotionally. They're very emotionally involved. And they have their ups and downs emotionally, but my emotions were always very in check. And it was one thing that he told me that I think if a regular person were to hear it, they would take it at heart. They would be shocked. And he told me, asked me, who do you love more, your mother or God?
How old were you at this?
I was maybe 8 or 9, maybe 10 years old. He asked me, what's more dear to you, your mother or God? And I was a young kid, I said, my mother.
Yeah.
I didn't think much about God or whatnot. And he said to me, no. He said, think about it. He questioned me very gently, very nicely. He said, who gave you your mother? Who gave you everything you have? You have to trace back everything to God. And he told me, look, maybe one day your mother, she gets sick and dies, and you're alone. You can't base your life on one person.
Right.
You can't base your life on money or fame or fortune, because all these things can be gone, can be taken out from underneath you. Yeah. And he told me, you always have to depend on God first and foremost, above all. And this gave me a very, very strong mental grounding. Yeah. Because anything that happened to me in life, anything bad that happened to me in life, and he also used to tell me, there's nothing that's going to come your way in life that you can't handle. God never sends you an obstacle, a test, you cannot handle. So when something would come my way, I'd be nervous, I'd be scared, I'd be remembered. And it gave me a strong courage. And it made me very, very, I don't know how to say, but it made me very good with relationships, because I would never try to behave in a way to make you like me, because I was never like a suck up to people.
Yeah.
Because I would never see somebody as a deity. There was God, and then there was everybody else. So I never put people up on a pedestal, so to speak. I think that helped me tremendously because when I would see my competitors or I would see somebody, an intimidating obstacle, I would always remind myself, don't look at them so high. I've been to so many big moments in sports, etc. And I always told myself, this is nothing. This is not that big of a deal. And it always lowered things. It always took away intimidation. And it was a very, very, very powerful lesson for me when I was young.
Wow. Well, a lot of people will be listening to that. I think a lot of people will, obviously that will resonate for a lot of people, but we're living in the West and obviously a lot of people in the West don't believe in the existence of God. How would you reason to say an atheist or someone who doesn't believe in God, the existence of God? What would you say?
Well, you see, there are three ways of knowing something. Okay. Primarily, let's keep it really basic, okay? Because philosophy it's an ocean.
Right.
The primary way you can know something is through your senses. Okay, you touch, smell, taste, hear, empiricism. Mm-hmm. Then we have deduction, mathematics. 1, 2, 3, 4, things are in order. 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
And then we have a third way of knowing something. It's called intuition. Mm-hmm. Now, intuition, nobody can debate your intuition. So, you can tell me the temperature of that tea. We can measure it.
Yeah.
It's objective. We can tell you the number of people in this room. We can count it. It's deductive. However, the taste of the tea, or what it's like to be you, this is all intuitive. And we have something to us we call consciousness. We are self-aware. This self-awareness is something metaphysical. It is beyond physics. We cannot put it in a test tube. There's a part of us we cannot put it in a test tube. So it reminds me of a little example I like to give, a little question I like to ask people, because I often try to teach people about self-reflection and consciousness. And today the West is so dominated by materialism.
Yeah.
It seems to be that.
And for those who don't know, what is materialism?
What is materialism? That's such a great question. That's why this little anecdote is something that I think really helps people learn the difference between the great questions on substance philosophy. So, basic question, basic thought experiment. I'm building a robot. Yeah.
Okay.
And we talked about this before, but for the audience,
right.
I'm building a robot. I'm building a Mohammed 2.0.
By the way, I take some of Firas's lines. We talk sometimes. I take some of his lines and I use them in Speaker's Corner. All right. Now you know some of the.
We're corresponding. I take some of his lines, plenty. Believe me.
No, not really. But anyways, people would have heard me say what you're saying now. So go ahead.
It's
someone special heard. Remember the robot one?
Oh yeah, the robot one.
Yeah, so I like to tell people, okay, let's say we're building a robot. Trying to learn a deep philosophical question and trying to learn it through a thought experiment is more easy than a long-winded explanation.
Yeah.
We're building a robot. Okay, so the robot, instead of skin, he has sheet metal. Instead of bones, he has steel bones. Instead of blood, he has oil. Instead of a heart, he has a pump. Instead of an eye, he has a camera. Instead of this, he has this. Everything is machined. He talks like you, acts like you, he has a program. We program him to talk like you. We program him to think like you, to learn like you. He has your IQ. If I pinch him, he says, ow. If I tell him a joke, he laughs. But I programmed him to do this. Then he's exactly like you. The only thing we know the difference between you and him is he's made of steel. When we touch him, you're flesh and bone, he's steel. And then one day I come and I destroy this Mohammed Hijab 2.0. Now the question I have, there's no wrong answer right now. We're not trying to see a right or wrong answer. I'm asking you, did I commit murder or did I destroy a property?
Destroyed property.
I destroyed a property.
Yeah.
So somebody who says I committed a murder, he would say, look, I'm a materialist. Meaning the only thing that exists, and there are many people out there who are materialists, they believe that the only thing that exists is the material substance. They would say, look, that Mohammed Hijab 2.0 is exactly like you. He should have his rights like you. He's 100% a human. Because there's nothing more to you than substance material. Material substance. Now the people who say, no, you just damaged property, we gotta ask them, okay, what was missing? What was the difference? What's the difference? Arabic not too bad. What is the answer to that question?
Then we go to the problem of consciousness.
There's a problem of consciousness.
Yeah.
Now, how do you know consciousness? Do you know it deductively, mathematics? Or do you know it empirically through your senses?
Neither.
Either. We know it intuitively. Now, because we know something intuitively, that shows us that science is not absolute. Now, I love science. I could sit here and praise science for 1 hour if you like. But I'm going to save you 1 hour, okay? Take my word for it. I'm intrigued by science. I read up on science. I believe in science. I think it's one way to know something.
Yeah.
However, does it tell me the truth with a capital T, as I like to say?
Yeah.
Not truth, everyday truth, comfortable truth.
Yeah.
We're not thinking too deeply here.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the truth. Philosophers are interested in the truth, the capital T.
Yeah.
Can science give me the capital T truth? The answer is no. The answer is no. Because it couldn't tell me even about my own consciousness. So Leibniz, one of the great thinkers that I'm very fascinated with, he said, look, think about it this way. If I were really tiny, thought experiment, okay, and I was walking around in your brain, I would see neurons firing, I would see blood flowing, I would see a brain, a physical brain, I would see all sorts of things. But I wouldn't see life, I wouldn't see your thoughts, I wouldn't hear the song you're playing in your head that you hear in your mind, I wouldn't hear it. All I would see was the information. Now this information is being transformed somewhere, somehow, into an experience. But this experience is outside the test tube, as I like to say. I can't put it in a test tube. It's what we call in philosophy metaphysical. It is not physical. So if I'm going to adopt a dogmatic scientific method, meaning it's science or nothing, I'm denying the thing that makes me most human. The thing that's in my face 24 hours a day that I cannot deny. And this is a lot of philosophy in a few minutes. We have the cogito, I think therefore I am, which proves intuition is above all. First, it's the first thing that you know. It's actually the only thing that we know. Now, we were talking earlier today, what is the difference between believing something and knowing something?
For those who don't know, what's the cogito?
Cogito is something that Descartes said that many people misunderstand. He said, look, I think therefore I am. And people laugh. Well, the guy finally figured out he exists. Ha 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 ha. It's not that he figured out he exists. He knew that before. What he figured out is that I now know something. I don't believe something because everything is belief save the cogito. To that point, he said, look, let me cross-examine everything I believe.
Yeah.
And he found out that everything he believed, he could doubt it. His doubt was so extreme, we call it Cartesian doubt. Modern philosophy, most philosophers will agree, most scholars will agree, it started with Descartes. Because he did something so different that the Greeks didn't do.
Even though we said Ghazali was before him.
You know what? He's quite a copy of Imam Ghazali, I gotta admit. Okay, but again, I'm just starting to touch on Imam Ghazali's work. And when I read it, I was so amazed how similar it was to the Descartes' work, and it comes over 100 years before.
Yeah. Maybe more than that.
Yeah, more than that. Yeah, it's actually more. It's incredible how the Islamic philosophers were so fascinating. And Avicenna touches on a very interesting thought experiment. He calls it the floating man experiment. He's a Muslim philosopher scholar. He said, look, imagine you are a floating man.
Even though he's excommunicated.
I'm still looking into that. I don't know too much of the story, but the floating man experiment, he says, okay, imagine we take away your eyesight. We take away your hearing. We take away your taste. You're floating in the air. Okay, we take away the dunya. Everything's gone. We take away one thing at a time. You're just floating. Even we take away your spatial orientation. Is there still something? And the answer, if you think about it, is yes. There's a consciousness. What are you conscious of? Nothing really. But there's a consciousness. And he says, you see, he took it a different trajectory, but he found something that you cannot put in a test tube. That is beyond, it's beyond physical properties.
Yeah.
Now, you see, Aristotle, he made a lot of Socrates' lessons very easy to understand. So Socrates would tell you, okay, look at this knife. See this knife? If I show you a knife in metal, and I show you a knife in plastic, and I show you a knife made of wood, and then I show you a drawing of a knife, you're going to tell me, that's a knife, that's a knife, that's a knife. They're all knives. And you're going to tell me they're all knives because they all have something in common. This thing they have in common, we call it the essence. So this table has the same property as all other tables in the history of the world. Every one of them. They all shared in something we call tableness, the essence. If you change the essence, you change the thing. So if I take this table and I make a toothpick out of it, you're going to be like, it's no longer a table, it's now a toothpick. I changed the essence, yeah? So Muhammad Hijab, after the age of 7, every single cell in his body has been changed. According to modern science,
Interesting argument, yeah.
every single cell in your body is gone. So
It's been replaced.
It's been replaced by a new material.
Yeah.
So now how can we say you're the same Muhammad Hijab? We do say it.
Wow, yeah, exactly.
This is known as the problem of ship of Theseus. So Theseus was a Greek who had a ship. The ship had 99 parts. Every month, one part was changed, put in a garage somewhere, as the part would get old. So after 99 months, I'm paraphrasing here, the ship was brand new parts.
So, yeah.
Still the ship of Theseus, we're still riding on it, it's on the same license, people see it, that's Theseus' ship. Oh, where were you today? I was on Theseus' ship, we refer to it as Theseus' ship. But then we take all the old parts we've been putting in the garage and we reassemble them. Which one is Theseus' ship? Theseus' ship is not out there in the world, it's in here. So we're getting in deep philosophy. We talked about idealism. Maybe it's too much of a topic for today.
Yeah.
But the idea is there are things that are known by the mind. So Socrates classed it in 2 categories. You have things that are known by the senses, the dunya, the world. That's all dissolving. This glass, 1,000 years from now, is not going to be here. I know it via the senses. It belongs to a category of things, and this is also very in the Buddhist religion, the Islamic religion, in Socratic thought, Greek philosophers, they say, look, this thing is going to dissolve. It's a category of things that dissolve. The things known by the mind never dissolve. Is the number 1 ever going to dissolve? Never. How do we know Muhammad Hijab? We know him by the mind. His body will dissolve. His body has already been changed several times in his life. However, how we know Muhammad Hijab is through the mind. And this is what we call the soul. This is one way we know the soul. The soul is known via the mind. So Socrates said, the soul is a class of things, like how do we know God? We know God via the mind. We know God via intuition, not mathematics or empiricism.
Which is what we call the fitrah.
Which is what we call, that's why I was telling him today earlier. I studied philosophy for so many years before I really delved into Islam. I've only been really studying Islam for 70 years, which is not a long time. If people know Islam, it's not even close to 1% how much there is to know. But I realized that all the lessons I learned in Western philosophy and in Buddhist and all the great thinkers, I was very fascinated with ideas. It's all in Islam in a very deep and profound level that I think would be too long and drawn out for one video. You know what I'm saying? But one thing we know is the soul. But we know it directly. It's actually, you know the soul more than you know this table or physical world around you. The soul is more immediate. It's known intuitively.
Are you saying that now we have a first-person subjective experience and this consciousness, and that first-person subjective experience directs us to 2 things: our own existence, the reality of our own existence, but also the existence of a higher metaphysical force, which brought rise to our own existence?
Tell me the story of Adam. Please, alayhi salam. Tell me the story of Adam. Abbreviate it for me. Tell me, what happened there?
In a nutshell, the Islamic tradition goes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, okay, and He created Adam from the earth. And when He did so...
A material substance?
A material substance.
Okay.
But when He did so, He breathed into this soul. And when He did so, He then
breathed
became
into
living.
him this soul. Where is the soul? How is it known?
Yeah, so the Quran asks, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلْ رُوحٌ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. So they ask you about the soul. Say that the soul is from the command of my Lord, that you won't know much about it. So in other words, frankly, from our perspective, not much has been given in terms of information. All we know from the Islamic perspective, once again, is that number 1, the soul is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or God Almighty, implanted or ensouled Adam with, made him viable through it, and afterwards all of human beings have the same feature, because the hadith is a hadith in our tradition of which is very well known. It's like Ibn Mas'ud narrated it, It says that the human being is created 40 days in his womb, in one form, and then 40 days X, Y, Z. And then he said at the end of it, then the angels breathes into the human being's soul. So the soul is a feature of every human being.
Now, can I ask you a question? Are we made of one soul or many souls?
Every human being has one soul.
But are we made of one soul? Does it make any comment on if we're made by one soul, original soul?
What? That each human being has.
Do we share in the same soul? Or is it individual soul?
Every individual has a specific soul inside of them.
But this is the metaphysical property. So we have a story in the Quran that says, look, there's this material substance, okay, we can test it scientifically, but then there's an ingredient we don't know much about.
Yeah.
But this ingredient, you're experiencing it directly.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, it flies in the face of science.
Yes.
When you ask a materialist philosopher,
Because science has naturalistic presuppositions. It's all about materialism.
that's all. When we ask
all it can
the
do.
scientist,
Yeah.
how come I'm conscious? The answer is we don't know. Mystery. We don't know. They will never know.
Yeah.
They will never know.
No.
Now, we have in philosophy we have a paradox called the Chinese room. Sorry, a thought experiment, not a paradox.
Yeah.
It's called the Chinese room. Okay, so the Chinese room is you're in a room, and I'm outside the room, and I slide in a Chinese character. The Chinese character says, "Hello," and I slide it in the room, and you slide back to me, "Hello to you too." And I slide you a note saying, "How are you?" And you slide me back, "Very good," and you. And we're having this Chinese conversation. And then I open the door, and I see it's you. I say, "You speak Chinese?" You're like, "No, I don't speak Chinese." But we're having a conversation. I said, every time you slide me a character, I look in the book, this character, when you get it, send out this response. This is how a robot works. The robot doesn't understand the essence of words. He's just following an algorithm. They can get so sophisticated that they give you the impression that they're human.
Yeah.
Like, one time the scientists were trying to mock Descartes, and they made a computer type, "I think therefore I am." It would print that out every so often. To say, look, even the computer thinks it's conscious, but it's not. And they were poking fun at Descartes. But really what they were doing was they're proving they have consciousness. Because that is just an extension of you. If you really think about it, somebody has to have consciousness to say, "I think therefore I am." Long story short, is people, when you see a robot, a very sophisticated robot, people think, "Oh, one day they'll have consciousness." No. They'll give the appearance of consciousness. They'll be very sophisticated and talk and act. But we saw that the Mohammed Hijab robot that we're building, it's a destruction of property. Have you ever seen the movie Castaway? Tom Hanks.
Is that?
Oh, that one, the one alone on the...
Yeah, he's alone on the
I've
island.
seen that. He talks to the football, remember?
He talks to the football.
Wilson's.
Wilson.
Yes, yes, I
and he
know
loses
Wilson.
Wilson. He's right.
Yeah.
Does Wilson have a mind? But he projected his own mind onto Wilson. One day we're going to have robots and we're going to project our own mind onto them. You can project your mind. Some people talk to their
Plants.
imaginary friend.
Okay.
The mind can be projected. It can do so many
And
things.
that's basically what you're saying, the input for a robot.
Right. People
Yeah.
are going to be like, "Oh no, robots can have consciousness one day." No, they cannot. Think about the Pinocchio story. I want to be a real boy. I want to be... What? How did they make him a real boy? They had to bring in some kind of metaphysical element. We're living proof of metaphysics. We're living proof of a miracle. Me, I don't need Richard Dawkins to tell me if I'm going to live again or whatnot. I know the part of me belongs to the class of the mind. It's only known by the mind. Mathematics will never get old and rust and die. The things known by the mind are not subject to corrosion, so to speak. And I really always love the profound question the Quran asks. You know, again, my Quran is very weak, but I know that there's a part where they ask, you know, will we be resurrected? What brought you here the first time? You see, Socrates has a very interesting dialogue he has in the Phaedo. He says, look, if you grew taller, you were first shorter. You can't grow taller if you were not first shorter. Impossible. They generate one another. So if I fell asleep, first I was awake. And if I wake up, first I was asleep. And you can do this with all the opposites. If I was cold, first I was warmer. If I became warmer, first I was colder. There's no escaping it. They're tied together. Wallahi, you can examine it for thousands of years, and they have. The greatest minds have examined it. And we cannot say that one doesn't generate the other. When was your birthday?
5th of October.
Okay, where were you a year before the 5th of October? You were not living.
Oh yeah.
You were not alive. You came to life. Yeah, there was a time and moment in space, whatever the date was exactly, you came to life. What were you before you came to life? Socrates would tell you, and I would agree, that some people have an emotional attachment to answer this question. The truth is, you were not living, you were dead. But you came to life, it already happened. Well, you know, it already happened. And if you were to go with the scientific method today, science would tell you, look, you're never going to come to life. If I knew science before I came to life, they would tell me, look, it's impossible. The world you're talking about is impossible. If this world is possible, it's a contingent. Remember, we're talking about Leibniz. This world is a contingent, meaning it could have been another way. If this world exists, it's very possible there are other worlds that exist. Why not? If you understand cause and effect, you would know that if this world is possible, any world is possible. As a matter of fact, if you follow regeneration, what Socrates says, it says, look, if everything went from life to death and never reciprocated again, everything would be dead by now. Everything would be dead. If time is infinite, the cycle would have been done. If it was a one-time thing. This is complicated thinking. It is. It's very advanced deduction. Very advanced. But the truth of the matter is, like, upon learning these things, I really found them often in the Quran in abundance. And it's fascinating. It's very fascinating.
I see. That's really interesting information. And I think it's one of the things that we really don't stress enough. I think of the consciousness, the hard problem of consciousness. It is a very unique argument. It does require a bit of brain juice, if you like, hard thinking, if you will, yeah? But it's definitely something that's good to put out there. Moving on to another issue now, I just wanted to kind of put out some kind of things, social things. Obviously we live in the West, we're Muslims and all these things, and we're oftentimes accused of, okay, well, Muslims are accused, generally speaking, by the right wing. I'm not sure how it is in Canada.
Mohammed, keep an eye on can you see the red dot?
Yeah.
If that goes off, that means we have to change again, yeah?
Alright.
Start again. Because
So-
every 30 minutes, stop.
That's right. I don't know how it is in Canada, but here in the UK and we know in the US as well, there is this kind of now a growing right-wing trend, a lot of attack on Islam and these kind of things, and accusations of extremism and these kind of things. So, how have you found that yourself, and how would you advise Muslims to respond to that in your way?
Well, I think the best thing is behave well, be a just person. Be a just person. If you have information, share it. If you don't know, research it and learn it. The worst thing you can do is talk out of ignorance or anger, frustration. But really, adab, show a good adab. And what's Islam about? Islam is about many central themes. But one central theme is justice,
Yes.
fairness. Me, I'd rather suffer the consequence than be unfair with somebody. I'd rather lose $100 than be unfair and keep my $100. Wallahi. Because I find justice to be beautiful, and I find that one of the central themes of Islam is justice. That's why I find Islam beautiful. Even the Arabs at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they thought that the camel having rights was absurd. He was too progressive for them. Now Islam, for me, I see it as a direction. The Prophet ﷺ, he took the Arabs one step at a time towards a direction. More and more lenient, more and more forgiving, more and more tolerant, more and more loving, more and more caring. And we have to continue this trend today. If the Prophet ﷺ was alive today, he would be the most merciful, the most friendly, the most kind, the most generous. I believe that because George Bernard Shaw, after reading the Seerah, he said, if this man was alive today, he would solve many of the world's problems. Because like we were talking earlier today about William Deltley, a German philosopher, he says, look, we're all made of the same internal stuff. This thing you have inside you, we've just been talking about, your consciousness, this stuff. You share with every human being. So you can transport yourself in their shoes. If you really put your mind in their place and their time and if you don't look at it from your perspective, if you're a really open-minded human being, you put yourself in their shoes, literally, mentally speaking, and see the world the way they see it. They were the most lenient, progressive, and forgiving, and honest human beings. That's how I see it. And we have to continue this trend. We have to continue this trend because the truth of the matter is, this is what Islam was seen as. The slaves were Muslim. The first Muslim was a woman, and so on and so on and so on. These were seen as crazy ideas back then.
Well, I mean, you see, like, we started the show talking about Joe Rogan having a high regard for you. I mean, he mentioned you as one of the best.
Over hundreds of years. And so the civilizations, they went through different cycles. The last cycle is when they become corrupt. Decadence. They start cheating, fighting, killing one another. They're infighting, a lot of infighting. And this infighting causes the suicide of the nation. So nations are not murdered, they commit suicide. Why? They become corrupt. The more corruption, the more chance of them being overtaken by a competing nation. Islam and Christianity kept corruption at bay. Now, of course, there was corruption that crept in every single type of, we know that, okay, we have ISIS. The Christians, they have their KKK, among other problems in the Catholicism, the priests, etc. Yes, but these are people who did bad things, but this is not a religion, it's not a creed. It's not the creed. So for instance, if a secular American does something wrong, I don't say, hey, that's the Constitution, that's what you get. That's not what I say. I say that individual, he decided to do something bad. And there's so much to weed out because the media loves to blame groups that they compete with. Plato asked a very interesting question. He asked a very, very interesting question. He said, look, does God say something is good or bad because its nature is good or bad? Or is it good or bad because Allah said so? Because God said it's bad. Therefore, whatever He says is bad by Him saying so. Or is it its nature bad? Is it haram by nature? He said, look, if you believe in God, if Allah says something is haram, bad, it's bad. We don't need to ask more because God is not questionable. If you don't believe in God, it's all aesthetics. Do you find it to be haram or halal, or is it ugly? If you find it ugly, you think it's bad. If you find it to be beautiful, you find it to be good. So if you don't believe in a God, good and bad becomes beautiful and ugly. Whatever you find beautiful is good. Whatever you find ugly is bad. If you think about it, this is really what it is. And that's why when I was reading in the Quran, I was like amazed. And they say, follow your lusts. Wallahi, this is the ethics. If you don't believe in Allah, you follow your lusts. That's it. That's what ethics boils down to. When somebody tells me I hate Islam, what I hear, he defines Islam to be ugly. Why? Because he wasn't raised this way. Now, there's a lot of beauty in Islam. You have to study it to know. But this person didn't study it. There's a lot of beauty in Christianity as well. A lot of beauty in Judaism as well. But you have to go beyond the rumors that you hear. Because there are deep and profound lessons in all the traditions. And people just live a superficial life in the West, generally speaking. Not everybody, I don't want to generalize, but the recent trend is to be superficial. Capitalism is go buy more. Yes, there's poor people or whatnot, but go buy more. Consume more, buy more, you'll be more happy. The truth of the matter is you won't be. You can have plenty of material goods. Proof of that is, where is the most depression in the world?
The West.
Because
there was a study that was done, I was quite interested in seeing that, where Forbes magazine, I think in WHO, they looked at depression in countries and they said that their top 20 was all basically Western countries with the exception of, I think, Nigeria.
But they have real problems.
Number one was the USA.
And they take the most antidepressants.
Yeah, that's right.
The most pills for psychological ailments. But the number of psychological ailments is on the rise. How come the pills, the cures are on the rise and the ailments on the rise? It's become an epidemic. And that's why I felt like I had an edge growing up, like I was saying earlier. Because me, I just believed in God. So they used to tell me, if Allah takes something from you, you're going to pay. Say, inshallah, tomorrow will take something better. I believed it. So I always had a strong mental mind. I had a strong mind growing up. And I still feel there today because I go through bad times like everybody else.
Yeah.
But I love what Hamza Yusuf said. He said, hopelessness is a bid'ah. You want a bid'ah? He said. Because Muslims, they argue about bid'ah. This is a bid'ah. He said, you want a bid'ah? Bid'ah is hopelessness. That's a bid'ah. could never have hopelessness. And of course, if anybody who's familiar with the seerah, they know there's never hopelessness. It doesn't exist. And again, these are like one famous writer, Stephen R. Covey. I read a lot of books, from every corner of the globe.
7 steps. To
7 habits of highly effective people.
Yeah.
He says, look, if you believe, he says, look, you got to build your life, very similar to Islamic thinking. He said, you have to build your life on a foundation, something unshakable. If you build your life,
This guy was a Mormon. Yeah.
was he?
Yeah, I think he was.
He said, if you build your life on your spouse,
Yeah.
maybe your spouse leaves you one day, your whole life will come crumbling.
Yeah.
If your edifice, your building, is built on a stone that's shaky, you'll always be insecure. So maybe you build it on your wealth, and your wealth can be taken from you. Maybe you build it on your health, your youth, that's going to be taken from you. Everything in the dunya, everything in the world can be taken from you. So even if you have a firm grasp, you always have a deep sense of insecurity. So he says, look, if you believe in God, put God obviously first.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe in God, he says at least put your principles, meaning I'm going to be honest, respectful. Who are you really? And never compromise it. But the problem, I found the principle argument to be a second best. Because even yourself, you can be tempted. I'm always going to be weak. I can maybe be tempted or have a go through a phase in my life that I might betray my own principles. It's not surety. I'm not sure. I still have a fundamental insecurity.
Yeah.
So I think the healthiest, most psychological mind, he believes in God. He accepts his nature. I have this part of me that's miraculous, that's unique, that science cannot even comment on. So I don't need the permissions of the scientists. I don't need to bow down to them and be awestruck with them. You know, I was asking you earlier one of your favorite hadiths. What
Did I give you an answer?
You did. But it's a very advanced one. Let's say it's a very advanced one. I'm gonna keep that one. But one hadith, and you tell me its authenticity, is supposedly, what I was told, the Prophet told some kids to chase their shadow.
You guys want tea?
Oh no, I'm good. Thank you. Huh? So chase your
We'll have to
shadow.
look at that one.
Why?
I don't know.
He said, chase your shadow.
Yeah.
This is what I was told when I was young. So I really, it's
Not-
at least with the theme of Islam.
There is a statement of Ibn Qayyim, Al-Jawziyya. He said that chasing the dunya is like chasing the shadow.
Similar. Maybe it was paraphrased.
Yeah.
But the way I was told, he told, chase your shadow. When they couldn't catch it, we couldn't catch it. He said, now chase the sun.
Other channel.
And when they came back, said, what was the lesson? He said, when
and
you chase the
another
dunya, it's like you're chasing your shadow.
Yeah, Muslim.
You never catch it. When you chase Allah, the dunya runs after you. It was a very profound, so I never groveled growing up. And I felt I got a respect for my peers. I had a strong, I don't know how to say it, but I had a strong backbone. English. And I never believed something was impossible. Like when I started learning jiu-jitsu, I had nobody really to teach me. Wallahi.
Wallahi, I'm happy that you brought this in
The
because
initials.
in the time that we have left, and what I want to do in the next episode, even if it's going to be a short episode, we want to talk about, because this is your area of specialism, it's another area of specialism.
It's pretty. Don't worry, it's not.
I want to talk
It's
about
cameras up to here.
basically like keeping healthy, keeping fit, keeping strong, because it's like, Plato, you talk about Plato, right? And this is quite a simplistic model, but I think it's quite an effective one. Having a mind, body, and soul connection, like all those three things have to be to some extent, satiated. They have to be stimulated, if you will. Yeah. So I want to talk to you about that in the next episode. But if you did like this episode, guys, now you see the other side of Firas Zahabi, which is a very deeply critical side, a well-read side, and a side we don't get to see or hear of much often because you are involved in, more, maybe you could say, visually exciting things. But in the next episode, we are going to be talking about those visually exciting things and how to take care of yourself, maybe on a physical level. Make sure you subscribe to the page and you subscribe to Firas Zahabi's page as well. He's got a really good YouTube channel, instructionals on different fight techniques, and he is according to Joe Rogan even, one of the best, if not the best in the world. So you're going to check that out in the description box, and I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.